term video art is a wide umbrella that covers a lot of different aesthetics and methods, but one thread that runs through much of it is recursion. Whether it's created through an optical feedback loop, through an internal feedback loop, or through a recursive function in code, recursion is an effective way to create patterns that are both complex and organic. In this video, I will demonstrate an optical feedback loop and then walk through the steps of creating a similar effect within TouchDesigner. Here, I have a camera connected to one of the inputs of this video mixer. The output of the mixer is connected to this monitor. The monitor is pointed at the camera, so the image that is displayed on the monitor is fed back into the camera. This is called a no-input feedback loop because there is no starting image. To make this more interesting, I'm going to add an input layer, specifically this octahedron. This setup has three parameters that I want to highlight: brightness, zoom, focus. Take note that when I adjust any of these parameters, the effect compounds with each iteration. If I turn up the brightness, each iteration gets exponentially brighter. If I turn down the brightness, each iteration gets exponentially darker. If I zoom in, each iteration is enlarged exponentially. If I zoom out, the iterations appear to recede into the distance. And if I defocus the image, each iteration gets progressively more blurry. Now let's recreate this setup in TouchDesigner. If you're opening TouchDesigner for the first time, the network will look like this by default. Start by deleting all of the default nodes and closing the palette with this button in the top left. Then, hit the Tab key and select Movie File In. If you happen to see a different set of operators in this window, click the top tab up here. Now click the plus to the right of the file field in the Preferences pane. I'm going to select this octahedron animation. I encourage you to download this video clip from the link in the description and use it as well, but feel free to select a different video if you like. Navigate to the Common tab and select 32-bit float RGBA in the pixel format menu. Then connect the movie file in top to an out top, leaving a lot of space between them. Then click the down arrow in the top right and select Split Left-Right. Then resize the new pane so it's a little bit smaller, and then click the triangle in the top left of that new pane and select a panel. Now I can see the output of this network on the right side of the screen, but the aspect ratio is incorrect. To fix this, I'm going to zoom out one layer using the scroll wheel and change the parameters of the Project 1 comp. Since my starting file is 1080 by 1080, I'm going to click the Layout tab and enter those values for the width and height parameters. But if you're using a different starting file, then make sure the values that you enter match the resolution of that video. Zoom into the Project 1 comp to get back to the project layer. Then right-click on the wire between the two nodes and select Insert Operator. Select Chroma Key. Set the Hue-Min value to 180. Now the green background has become a transparent background. If you're using a different starting video, you can configure this node differently. Just make sure that you make a significant portion of the image transparent. Then insert a null top after the chroma key top. Leave the null connected to the out top, and connect an additional wire from the null to a feedback top. Add an overtop in between the null top and the out tops, and connect the feedback top to the second input of the overtop. Drag the overtop over the feedback top. This gray line should appear. This means that these two nodes are now connected in a feedback loop. To set up a way to reset the feedback loop whenever necessary, hit Tab, click the Chop tab, and select Keyboard In. Click the plus in the bottom right of the Keyboard In chop. Click the feedback top, and then click the middle of the Keyboard In chop. Drag it to the Pulse button, and select Chop Reference. Now you can reset the feedback loop by hitting the 1 key on your keyboard. Add a transform top after the feedback top. You can think of the scale parameters in this top like the camera's zoom lens in the hardware loop. Set both scale X and scale Y to 1.05. Now each iteration is 5% bigger than the last. Add an HSV adjust top after the transform top. You can think of the value multiplier parameter in this top like the brightness slider in the hardware loop. Set it to 0.9. Now each iteration is 10% less bright than the last one. Add a blur top after the HSV adjust top. You can think of the filter size parameter in this top like the camera's focus ring in the hardware loop. Set that parameter to 10. Now each iteration is much blurrier than the last. At this point, we've created a network that is roughly equivalent in function to the hardware loop that I demonstrated earlier. Now here are some additional nodes that you can put inside the feedback loop to create some effects that are harder to achieve with hardware. Add a displace top after the blur top. Set the displace weight to 0.006. This operator displaces the image connected to the first input based on the color values of the image connected to the second input. You can connect any video you want to the second input, but I'm going to use a noise top. Connect an additional wire from the blur top to the first input of the noise top, and then connect the noise top to the second input of the displace top. Turn monochrome off, click the Transform tab, and type the Python expression abstime.seconds times 0.1 into the translate z parameter. Click the Output tab and select Noise for the RGB parameter. Now each iteration is progressively more displaced than the last. Open the palette with the button on the top left, select Image Filters from the top menu, and drag Sharpen from the bottom menu onto your network. Connect it in between the displace and overtops. And set the Sharpen amount parameter to 0.976. This creates a reaction diffusion effect. These are just a few of the things that you can do with the feedback loop in TouchDesigner, so I encourage you to experiment with different sequences of tops within the loop. And if you stumble across something awesome, leave a comment with instructions so that others can try it too.